What are we going to talk about?
Our anniversary.
Yeah. How to make marriage last. Welcome to Awakening Warriors, where we talk about life, love, lessons, and learning. It's anniversary day.
It's not anniversary day.
Podcast.
It's
Episode.
It's been a few weeks since we've been here. We took a week off because we were just, I don't know, you were like, I'm not really sure about recording because we would have had to do it the day before, so then we didn't. And then the following week came, and that was our anniversary weekend.
No, I just never got done.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Just didn't make it a priority.
What
I
were
just
you
weren't
doing?
feeling it, I guess, so we didn't do it. Or I wasn't feeling it, that's for sure.
I definitely wasn't that weekend. We were going to do it Saturday instead because you were like, I'm not really sure if we should do it. And I was like, sounds great, because it just felt like it would have been forced.
Yeah, the one weekend was really busy, I think, anyways, so. And then, yeah, I don't know. A lot.
We're here now, though.
Got
I'm
a
just
lot
saying.
going on right now, so.
It's been a few weeks, so. But we did, yes, have an anniversary on August 4th.
Our 11th.
Our 5-year marriage anniversary, but yes, we've been together for...
Almost 11.
Do you think every time you just set it down it gets unshaken? Because it's so noisy.
So controlling. That's.
I just asked a question. I didn't say do it or don't do it. I just asked a question. But together for almost 11. What's kind of fun is every New Year, that's like our official, it's not official, but like we celebrate the New Year as like, this is our whatever together. Like this one upcoming will be our 11th together.
We met in November, or October, November.
November. And we hung out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got serious.
What'd you give me for Christmas that year?
Got serious around. Stop.
I just wondering if you can jog my memory. Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I was I don't even know, an unaware, codependent, sought my approval and value from those outside of myself kind of person. I still struggle with some aspects of that, but not quite like then.
Luckily it was me and not somebody else.
I know, I'm like, it all worked out. Like, he gives me a hard time for some of that time, but I'm like, clearly, I did something right. Here we are.
I was well adjusted in that aspect of life already.
Okay, so I feel like we're being cryptic, and I'll just, for the sake of vulnerability, that year for Christmas, I bought him condoms, so that was part of the gift. It wasn't just that, but that was one of the items.
With a basket with a movie in it, and
some
condoms
candy and
shit like
popcorn
that.
and
Yeah, basically a before Netflix and chill was Netflix and
Yeah.
chill was like a personal Netflix and chill basket. I was like, what the fuck is this?
But it worked, really? Because here we are.
Yeah, still. I was never the one to in my mind I always mentally chase sex and everything, but I would never actually pursue it in real life that hard. I had turned down even in high school beforehand plenty of opportunities, but I was just I just turned to pornography, which is where my addiction came from, because I felt like that was a safer route rather than actual sex, which it is, because
there are definitely some pros to that.
Yeah, it was at the time it was a necessary evil for me in my high school days, I think. So it kept me out of a lot of girl trouble, essentially.
I thought my worth and value in other people seeing that in me, and sex was one of those ways that at the time I saw that, and so I was like, if this happens, that means he likes me. I don't know. How old was I? 19? 18?
18, I think.
So, poor
It was
little girl. I actually just saw something on Instagram that said, work to, love all the past women that you've been. And, I wouldn't say I was a woman then, but it's definitely a past version of myself that I can have some compassion for.
nice. I'm still just me. I'm the same version of me that I've always been.
No, you're not. You're a different version. And that goes against everything that you ever say. You're like, I must change. We will change. We will evolve. And now you're like, I'm always just me.
This is like a joke. It's a joke, not a dick. Don't take it so hard.
Okay, anyway, so we
So
don't exactly have like a specific topic around like anniversary, but
talk about marriage and stuff was my thought, because, you know, like, overall, you know, and I'm sure we've had a similar episodes. A lot of the stuff is like repeat because it's just like, you know, similar experience. Kind of like when Sean tells us fucking story over and over and over again. Like,
especially
yeah, I've heard this story 100 times now.
I was gonna say, especially if you've like been pretty consistent in our podcast journey, you've probably heard things repeated a lot. But I also think, like, even with like certain podcasts I've listened to, like, there's a lot of overlap at times. Like, yes, there's new content and new information, but there is a lot of overlap. Even between like Joe Dispenza and Eckhart Tolle in the books that I'm reading, like, a lot of overlap. But that creates, like, repetition creates mastery.
Repetition. Perfect practice creates perfect. Is that what he says? Perfect practice creates perfect. Kevin Trudeau.
Perfect practice creates something. I don't think it's just perfect, though.
Execution.
But in order to be like a master of something, or to be great at something, or be an expert, like, you need practice in that. You need repetition. And so I'm always down to hear things repeated.
Yeah, and if you're putting it back in your mind over and over and over again, like just pounding into your head, your subconscious is picking it up. And it gets, because at first, what kind of happens, the reason why repetition is such a thing, in my personal opinion, is because when you first hear an idea, like, you already hold these specific attachments and beliefs. And so your conscious mind won't let it go through. It's like the gatekeeper, you know? So you're just like, oh, that's wrong. That's not right. And then you hear it again, and you hear it again, and you hear it again, and it wears on you, essentially. And this goes for any concept and aspect. This goes for the fucking news. This is how they get to you, essentially. This is how they're going to get to your kids. Is repetition to normalize this. So if you start normalizing, you know, healthy things like, you know, how to manage your relationship and fucking how to develop growth and how to, you know, what books to read and stuff like that, then you'll start, your subconscious mind will start, your conscious mind will start, you know, you'll be more open to it, and then eventually your subconscious mind will let it in as well. So.
And these are things that I think we say this, but also just people in general, like, oh, I already know that. Well, if you know it, then you'd be doing it. Like,
to know and not to do is not to know.
Exactly.
Lewis Scott.
No! It's not!
I know, I just said that on purpose.
You used to think it was him for real?
I know, I did.
I don't remember who it is now at this moment, but...
To know and not to do is not to know. And it's such a good quote. Because it's like it's a quote about conceptualizing and embodying, essentially. Right. And I can conceptualize really good. Probably partially because I don't really visualize. So like conceptualizing is like the only thing that I can hold on to and obtain. Before embodiment. So, you know, for conceptualizing comes just so like naturally. Like I understand compassion and I understand empathy and I understand these things. But embodying that is a whole nother ordeal for me. So that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I would have went to college, I would have been one of those fucking pricks that are like really intellectually intelligent. But I also don't give a fuck. So like I hate those people. But yeah.
Hate? That's a strong word. Anyway.
I dislike those people. So.
Yeah, I don't really know where we're going to go with this, where we're going to start with this, but we just had our 5-year anniversary.
Well, what are the keys to, well, let's just dive right into it. What are the keys to a good marriage? Shut the fuck up.
Having a good sense of humor.
This might be our last.
Having a good sense of humor is helpful in a marriage.
Yeah, that's obviously helpful, but for me, the number one...
That's not my number one. It just was very applicable to the moment.
Gotcha.
Because if I would have taken that personally and gotten mad at you, which sometimes I do, we've talked about that.
Which you are.
Huh?
Huh?
I'm mad at you?
No, it's okay. Just keep going.
Clearly communicating! Is that what you're going to say is your number one?
Yeah.
Communication?
I'd say just the overall hot relationship. Open, humble, and transparent. Being hot.
Humble, open, and transparent.
Yeah. Humble, open.
Yeah.
What is it the other way? Hot.
Holt.
It's like an inn. Like, Holt.
We actually have a podcast on that. An early episode, actually. So we can dive into it a little bit here, but we like in depth go into what that means. So I think it's episode number 2, almost 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, so being humble, open, and transparent.
And a lot of these concepts were just stolen. None of these are original
Yes.
concepts. Like, I don't think I have a single original concept at all. And they probably don't either.
Right.
Somebody down the line of thousands of years, Plato, fucking Socrates, whatever else, a lot of these things probably came from like people like them that were really
Right.
connected to the collective consciousness. But, we just basically steal the material. And someday maybe we'll come something up with original. But...
And that's when you're when you're reading books, when you're listening to podcasts, when you're just in that space, like again, you hear a lot of that repeat. Like a lot of it is shared.
And a lot of it will be a different angle too. It'll just be it'll be the same concept, different way of saying it. That's what it comes down to. A lot of these books are just repeats. But that's huge because even if you've heard that concept 100 times, if you hear it a different way and look at it a different way, like a different analogies will hit people differently. Like if I talk about how your body works to a car guy, that'll relate to the car guy really well, or a plumber, or like depending on the analogy. So each writer has a different aspect and perspective on this concept, and they get handed off to you, and it hits you or it doesn't.
So that being said, a hot relationship was borrowed from a pastor.
Transformation Church.
Yes. Michael Todd. There
we go. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's something that we practice. I think the humble piece can be difficult for each of us, for you as well. You tend to have a difficult time speaking out loud your accountability.
I think you're right.
Which is something that I need. But even me, I mean, my ego can very much get involved in things, and being humble, I think, is the most difficult for me, probably. And the open and transparency, I think, are pretty related, and we've talked about this in past episodes, but we probably will until the end of our days, that, like, we really try to be super honest and really don't withhold. And I mean, there are times that we do. We're not perfect. I absolutely do.
And there's sometimes to withhold, but it's only for like an intentional conversation. Like you don't like, this isn't the time to have this conversation, so I'm going to have this conversation, tomorrow at breakfast, not tonight during before bed. Like there's
tonight during before bed.
So
yeah,
like there's necessary withholding. But, it's very far and few in between, I feel like.
Well, and that thing still gets brought up. It's not like it's forever withheld.
Yeah.
It's just intentionally thought about when to bring up that information.
Temporary withholding, yeah.
I think a big one for me, too, is I've grown a lot in this, and I think your growth in how you handle conflict and arguments and things like that has helped a lot. But, like, the ebb and flow of things, I used to have a very difficult time when we would get in a not great space, because my catastrophizing mind would just go to, like, this, not literally this is the end, but, like, he's going to love me less, he's going to want to leave me. And it's like, just like anything, there are cycles, and your relationship will go through those. Some seasons are longer than others, which can be difficult. And I think there's also the effort and the intention that you put in when maybe things aren't so great, but, like, sometimes you just need to, like, get through those. And there was a time in our relationship where I would hang on to, like, the sucky, and I would feel so down about it and guilty about it, and I'd have my own shame around it and all of these things. And, like, there's gonna be an up, just like the up will end as well. Keeping that in mind, like, it too shall pass comes when things are good and when things are bad. Like, if we're in a really great connected space, there will be a cycle change, and we will go into, like, a not so connected space. Like, it's just natural.
That was such a huge, like, mind shift change when David, like, explained that, because I always thought about it in the negative aspect, like, okay, I'm going through a hard time, this too shall pass, but, like, then the positive point, like, this too shall pass, like, having no true attachment to, the good or the bad situation, like, holy fuck, like, that just, like, why did I never catch on to that sooner? I had to have someone point it out to me.
Described that way.
Well, yeah, but it's just like common sense almost. If it goes for one, it goes for the other. Like, like, what the fuck?
I guess once you had that light shown on it, it was common sense, but
Yeah, it is common sense. It's not just yeah.
If it was common, everybody would think that.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, so
um,
that's another big one for me, I think.
Yeah, the honesty thing I think is the best because if you're withholding like just to the tiniest bit, then it creates strife in the relationship. Go ahead.
But it does that in a way because even if it's small, again, let me think of an example that would be small. If I've had a really rough day at work or something and like was choosing not to clearly communicate that to you, I'm showing up in that
Even if you're
space.
not choosing. Even if you're just unconsciously not choosing, you're still withholding. Not purposely withholding, but you're withholding.
I show up into that space with you like a altered version of me, kind of. And I think, if that's pretty small, but that comes with like, if you think about relationships and the things that come into that space at times, like there have been people that have reached out to you through social media and things like that, women specifically, and have like said things and you
try to get recruited me for a porn star thing.
Or like the one that was like, your big arms, something, and you said something about being married, or my wife wouldn't like that, and she was like, I don't care, like, if you're married, like, what? Okay. Anyway, but like those things, so then you share those with me, but had you not, like, you're showing up in this space with me, I think with you specifically, it almost would like give you a bigger head, and you'd be like cocky in this space, but like, maybe some other like male wouldn't appreciate that, but then wouldn't say anything to his wife, and I don't know. You're just showing up like this altered, not real version of you when you have something.
I feel like
withheld.
I have to hide it and all this other shit, and like now I'm in my head about like blah blah blah. Because I've got a story that I might be telling myself, and now I might be reacting differently than what I would be. Whereas if I'm just like, hey, look at this, check this out, motherfucker, and like your response is not my fucking problem. This is something that like whether I like it or not, or whether you like it or not, happened to pop up. So I'm just like, it's out in the air. Like, this is what's going on. And I'm not, like, saying, like, ooh, I'm going to fucking leave you for whatever else. But I'm like, here's this. Like, this is going on. Didn't you have, like, some fucking rando send you a bulge or his dick or some shit like that?
Yes, he would always, like, comment on my stories and say these really weird things and ask me very, like, weird questions that had to do around, like, my favorite sex position. And I'm like, why are you I did not like it. I'm like, I don't know if women do like that. And I literally asked him, like, is this how you engage with women? And that they, like, appreciate this? Anyway, but yeah. So, like, had that too. But you were well aware.
Yeah.
As soon as he sent me the bulge, I was like, okay, you're blocked. Not for me, but.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to turn down conversation in general because you never know where a conversation will lead. You can kind of, sometimes you can assume, especially based on profiles and stuff, that, like, that's where it's going to go. But, like, sometimes it's just, I don't know, I'm just open to the conversation in general, depending on the situation. So.
You also love all that, but that specifically.
Yeah.
It feeds
the
your
desire.
ego.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
And I think, I don't know. We talked about this in the self-mastery one too, but like knowing yourself, and that's like a lifelong journey. So I'm not saying you're going to like make this decision and then within 2 weeks know yourself. But when you really do, you then are more open in a space where you can like really truly get to know your partner too. And then when you're both working on knowing yourself and knowing your relationship and knowing each other, like things just flow better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the number one key is, being honest and the communication. Those are the number one. Those go hand in hand.
1 and 2? Oh, they both get to share number 1.
Yeah, basically. Because I feel like a lot of times, I remember, I don't know why this one popped in my head, but remember when you were at like your family's wedding thing somewhere, maybe for the Foxes or something, and then we were standing in line and somebody asked this dude where his wife was, and he's like, I don't know what that fucking bitch is doing, or some shit like that, and I was like, damn, and we weren't even to the level we were at then, but I was like, dude, that sounds toxic as fuck. I'm like, what the fuck? Who says that? Like, I don't know where that fucking bitch is. Like, I would never say that. Like, I would probably say that to you about you, but I wouldn't fucking say that to, like, you know, out in public and stuff. And we also don't fucking fake shit, like, though, either. I would never go to that point, but let's say I'm not getting along with you. People are gonna know that I'm not getting along with you. Like,
You'd be like, I don't know.
fucking irritated with you or whatever else. Like, it's going to be very apparent that we are not connected and we are not getting along.
I actually think that that's something that we have never had anybody say anything to us, but I think that sometimes, because if we're like in a little bicker argument type situation, like we will do that even in front of other people.
Yeah, I don't
And
give
I
a
like
fuck.
think about like,
Fucking
do
irritate
people
me.
like, does this make them uncomfortable, or like are they like, whoa, like why? And it does, again, it's not like these massive blow up whatevers, but like if we're irritated or I'm like, ugh, like whatever, like don't say that, or like stop touching me or whatever it is, like those things. Also, we're like that in front of people as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fake being nice to you or whatever else.
Like obviously,
I'm
like
tolerating you at
our
this point.
closer friends like definitely see that, but like even in front of like Joel, and we like shared a room with him, like I'm sure he like saw some interactions where he was like, but he even said like, "Oh, you guys are making me miss my other half." So I'm like, "Oh, probably not that bad."
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, just the authentic relationship, I think, is like the key. And I think making the marriage a priority, because I've never really been, I guess in high school you could say I was one of those guys hanging out with the boys and stuff, and I wasn't really focused on girls a whole lot in comparison. But, you know, like men in the marriage need to make sure, in any spouse relationship, I suppose, whether girlfriend, marriage, whatever, but should make their like female partner a priority rather than, because a lot of times especially like listening to your friends and knowing about like other people's, you know, relationships and stuff, like you know, like guys make a priority for their friends over their family or some shit.
Right, like their
which
like
is weird to
social
me.
lives over
Yeah,
their
like,
wife and their children.
yeah, and I'm not like, one, like I went out with Ben and those guys for that one thing, that one time up north, you know, last year or whatever. And then, you know, like occasionally we'll do that, like once a year maybe,
and that's
or
what
something.
I was like. I don't think it's necessarily unhealthy to have friends who you do things with that are outside of your wife. We very much share a lot of our friends, for sure. But I like, had you made like, if Austin wanted you to go do something with him and whatever, like okay. But also again, if that's happening like every single month, that is an issue. That is not.
Yeah.
like you said, like even with Ben and them, like if that happened yearly or even every 6 months, like I'd probably be cool with that. But I also know the person and the people that you're going to spend time with, and I'm okay. Like, not that I can like approve or disapprove of your friends necessarily, like you get choices, but it's just I trust them and I like them as humans as well. So if we were to go spend time where like these people that we hear are like going to spend time with people that aren't growth oriented or are also not prioritizing their family or themselves, and
Yeah.
it's just like destructive behavior.
Yeah. So making the way I see it is, I'd say you come first in the physical realm, at least. I'm not talking about necessarily God, because I haven't depicted where he lands personally. She lands. Then, so it goes you, your wife, your kids. Because you need to take care of yourself first, and then you need to take care of your wife, and then you need to, because, you know, you guys are a team, you guys are fucking tied together, and then you need to make sure your kids are together. And I'm not talking about, like, you know, fucking physical food and stuff, like, you know, kids are gonna starve to death or some shit, but, like, you know, overall healthiness, you know, you, your wife, your kids. And then outside of that, can you start thinking about business, friends, and shit like that. So, you know, I think a lot of dudes are selfish. I mean, men and female, male and females are selfish, but I feel like, you know, being a male and watching males fail at being males, they're just fucking super selfish in that regard. So they should be leading from the front, and if they're out fucking every weekend with the boys, like, that's not leading from the front. So, you know, You know, you want to go
You're
do
not
that
even
occasionally.
there to lead.
Yeah, exactly. You're not there to lead, so what the fuck are you doing? So, I feel like, yeah. That's one of the biggest things, is make sure your wife / family is a priority over, having your fun and whatever else, so.
And that means, like, on my end, too, like, I also need to prioritize this relationship. We do not have children, but we, like, see that often where children come into the picture and then your spouse is, like, booted to the side.
Yeah.
I think that I
You'll
have
struggle that.
Yeah, I think I have a strong possibility for that also happening, but prior to it happening, I'm aware that that is not how I would like to engage in my potential future family. And yeah, I mean, if this isn't right, then our relationship with our kids are not going to be. Like, they would only be here because of us.
Yeah.
So this needs to come first. And if this is good, then anything that comes from us is going to be good too.
Yeah, for sure. And they're recognizing, like, how I'm treating her, how she's treating me, and that will forever affect how, those kids will function in future relationships. Like, I had a fucked up childhood as far as watching my parents interact. I think so did you for the most part. And so I think they were different, but they were very fucked up in both regards. And so then when we went to have, relationships, we got in very similar relationships, So then, like, what the fuck? That's where the cycle generational thing. So if we stop stopping the generational shit right now, before we even have kids, and then when we have kids, like, they reflect that, they'll never have the same fucking issues that we had because of our parents, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
like, drastically altering.
Yeah, yep. So, I mean, for me, I'm doing a lot of the work and awareness before, if I even have children, rather than waiting till I have children. Because I think a lot of people, like, have children in order to solve issues that they think are going to be solved. And then they're like, oh, fuck, like, because they're, like, thinking the kid's going to fix the relationship, which is just, like, I never understood that. Because, like, I'm like, that's another stressor that I'm fucking adding. Like, that's going to cause, well, why don't you watch the kid? I watched the kid yesterday. Oh, well, fucking, I just changed the kid's diaper. Why don't you, like, what the fuck? Like, that does not sound like you need to already be in a good space and then have a child. Otherwise, you're going to be fucked. Because you're going to be coming from, like, starting backwards. You know what I mean? So, now you have to fucking fix it with a kid rather than fix it before the child.
With an added stressor.
Yeah, with an added stressor, essentially.
Which obviously kids are great too, I hear. But, like, just naturally, they're going to decrease your sleep. They're going to increase your stress. They're going to...
Yeah.
Like, it just changes stuff.
Yeah. So if you can mentally get yourself under control, especially, like, if you're on medications or some shit like that, like, if you're on anxiety medications, you probably shouldn't have children. Like, children are going to be... If you're on anxiety medications, if it's clearly that bad, you probably shouldn't have kids. Same with depression.
There's a time and a place. I do not think that people are meant to be on them for their entire lives, but to say that if somebody is utilizing that at the time, they cannot have children, I don't think it's fair.
I would not encourage them to have children.
They're not asking you.
Well, maybe they fucking should. Jesus. Maybe that's a fucking problem. That's why they have anxiety. Well, we all have anxieties. But it's to the point, if they have anxiety and or depression to the point where you need some sort of medical doctor.
We're not going to get into this right now, but you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of times they're just pressured.
And that's why they're watching the Sods, so they can learn. They don't even have to ask me. I'm giving them free advice. If you have anxiety or depression to the point you need to take pills, I highly recommend you don't have children. That is not a good idea. Get that fixed before.
Fixed.
Yeah, it is.
There's nothing to fix necessarily. There's something to learn how to manage. That doesn't mean it's fucking broken. Look, you're making me say the F word.
Oh, fuck. Okay, well, what else? What else have we learned? I don't think we ever talked about sexual relations. I saw your heart drop.
No, you didn't.
That's a huge part of marriage.
Like having sex? Being intimate? Being intimate. I don't even think it's just sex. I think for you, a lot of times it is, but I don't know. Even that goes in waves. Of like.
Everything goes in waves. Ebb and flow, baby.
Yeah,
Ebb and
I know.
flow.
Everything is a cycle.
Yeah.
I'm aware. That was
Excuse
really
me.
cute.
So.
What do you mean by this?
I don't know. Like.
Elaborate.
I feel like in a lot of marriages, you know, the sex dies. Like, there's always the honeymoon phase and stuff like that. And for the 5-year point of marriage literally means nothing to me, and I've already expressed that to you. Like, it's really like the 11th year for me, like in my mind, right? Because that's how long we've really been together. Sure, we've been together for 5 years officially, but I had always said we're practically married anyways. Like, what the fuck does it matter? I'm like, we're not doing anything different. We're playing house in the house. We're, you know, fucking, we weren't sharing money officially, but we were both paying bills and, you know, for the most part equally and stuff at the time, and so on and so forth. I'm like, there's really not a lot of difference besides a piece of paper or filing taxes. I'm like, we're practically married.
Which we've learned isn't even the best
And-
situation anyway. We should have kept it separate.
And
Anyway.
so, anyways, and I'd always told her this. I told her this for years and years and years. I'm like, we're practically married. You're like, we're not practically married. We're not practically
But we're
married.
not.
And so,
I still stand by that, but.
so then, you know, eventually we got married. And that's fine and dandy, but in my eyes, I'm like, you know, this is kind of more so our anniversary, like when we got together, because we've actually been together for that long. And, you know, they talk about like the 7-year itch and stuff like that. And that means in 2 years I'm going to get itchy and stuff. But, and, I mean, fuck, if you go back to this one, I'm already 4 years past at that point. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, that's a third of my life that I've been with you specifically. So, you know, and yeah, anyways, that's my point. What was my point again? Fuck.
Sex?
Yeah, so sex, yeah.
Sex dies.
11 years, basically, together for the most part. Or no, we have been together for... You broke up with me once.
So annoying.
And I deleted you off Facebook.
Oh yeah, I was so mad when you sneakily added me back.
So, I mean, that's a long time to make that fucking last, because, like, let's be honest, fucking, at least for a dude, like, that is going through their head probably multiple times a day with, you know, multiple different individuals. So, like, and it's just natural. There's, you know, that's how we're programmed, we're hunters, we're looking to reproduce, blah, 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 whatever the excuse is. And so, I don't know. For me, I think it's been nice. I think you've been a good partner in the sense that you rarely say no, essentially. You're always like, sure, let's knock it out, let's go.
I'm always like, or I'm at least like.
90% of the time you're like, alright, let's go. Like, bang it out.
I think we've talked about this too. Our sex drives are very different. I think yours has gotten closer to mine in the past few years. Like, you used to be very...
Especially when I was fucking using Test. I could fuck a mailbox.
Ew! Gross!
I'm thinking of those big blue ones that are metal.
Like a post office one? Goodness. Oh yeah, but I think sex drive has like calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, it's
still,
probably 'cause I'm 30.
It's still much different than mine. Anyway. So yeah, I mean there are times when you are like ready to roll and I'm like, alright.
And I think
let's go.
And I think if I go so long, and this is just like, you know, PMS, whatever else, same thing. You know, you go so long, and then you just kind of get on edge, and I'm a little more testy and stuff like that, you know. So, like, you can tell it's been a while, because you can, like, I don't know, because there's like a lot of buildup and stress like that hits me and stuff like that, and for whatever reason, and we've had this discussion before as well on one of these podcasts, is, sex or ejaculation essentially was a release, a stress release. I'd be like, decompress kind of. And so, I think that really helps versus if you were like, no, I don't really feel like it. No, I don't really feel like it for like very regularly. Then that would probably create a bigger issue in our relationship specifically. Because I think otherwise, I could / other men could start, seeking other releases as well. Whether that be pornography, which throws me through a thing, because like now I don't have a reason to go to pornography and put a wedge in between our connection if even though you're not giddy about it or whatever, with the bells on, at least, you're willing. And so, because I do know that every time I look at pornography and then come back to you, there's usually, even if it's a small disconnection, there's always like a wedge in between us until we reconnect with sex, I think.
And even that, has decreased a lot over the years. Because it used to be the porn situation used to be a huge, massive wedge. And then it came to a point where, like, it was more like you asking permission, and I'd be like, sure, you do you, boo-boo.
Yeah. Which makes it a whole other thing, because now if I have to ask for permission, now I'm less likely to try, want to do it. Because now I'm asking, basically, can I... And now it's also not as much of a pressure. I think it's so interesting, because when you put pressure on anything, that's when things get fucked up, in my personal opinion. And that's why I don't like the concept of, putting so much pressure on marriage, because I don't think that's healthy. Personally, in my opinion. Like, you put this in a pedestal and you're just like, oh my god, this is like devout and whatever else, and then you're just like, what the fuck? Just like if you put an addiction on a pedestal, like, it's such a big thing, it's such a, whatever, but it's not. Because as soon as I started disconnecting, my attachment to porn, and stop putting putting so much stress on it, because in the beginning I would be so frustrated with myself and so irritated with myself, when I would have essentially a relapse or whatever you want to call it.
Well, then my reaction wasn't helpful either, because I would be tears and...
Yeah. But as soon as you put on less pressure, you're just like, okay, it's not that big of a fucking deal. And now I'm annoyed with myself at times. And this is, it's not even a regular thing. I can't probably count on, this year I can probably count on one hand, how many times I've looked
especially gone to that, full degree. Because there are times randomly, with being honest and open and not withholding, you'll be like, I like that Google titties. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, shit. I want that dopamine hit, but I'm I don't want to go all the way in, and then eventually the photos, you keep clicking on the things.
Anyway.
Oh, God, because I want to ride that edge. It's like an adrenaline rush type of thing. I don't know, it's weird. I have an issue.
Anyway. But yeah, the sex thing, intimacy, yes, but I think, again, for you, that means sex a lot of times. But I think just from a women's perspective too, I even just shared a couple things with you on Instagram, or maybe one thing. My sex drive has a lot to do, at the moment, has a lot to do with our connection and where we are, emotionally, and just where we've been at can directly impact where I'm at in terms of.
And I think that affects my whether I want to fuck or whether I want to make love thing,
Yeah.
So as well, sometimes I just want to fuck you and just make you pay.
Oh, we're just getting in it.
Oh fuck, we should do every episode
What? First
just
off,
kidding. It's fucking you, the joke.
speak for yourself.
Oh, fuck, I'm on a roll today.
Yeah, that's what this is.
Oh.
Anyway,
So yeah, so I think it's like whether it's almost like men and women have different responsibilities and roles in their marriage / any relationship. Um, and when it comes down to it, like that is a huge thing for most men. Obviously not all, but generalizing, like most men that's a huge priority for them. Because they want to feel desired, they want to feel wanted, they want to feel, like whatever it is. And so do women too, and probably more so. But yeah, sex is like, access to sex I think is a huge thing. Because if I'm getting the attention and the sex at home, then I don't have any reason to fucking like, I don't mind, and I like the playful flirtiness and stuff like outside of that, but outside of the house essentially. But like obviously, odds are fucking nothing's gonna ever happen because I'm getting satisfied at home rather than being. I haven't had sex in 2 weeks or a fucking week or whatever, and then it's just like, oh gee, now here's this opportunity. So, but again, that came from, I think a lot of that discipline came from high school too. But now I don't need porn as a crutch to go back into that thing. You know what I mean? So, because I could turn it away back then. So it's still, I just like, fucking, I'll just call him BB, Mr. Bosch. Remember when? Yeah, you know the story that I'm talking about. So he would pick up chicks. He was married. His wife is fine as fuck. And he would just go out with his buddies or whatever else, literally pick up these chicks and bring them home, essentially. And he would never do anything. Like, it's the hunt and the whatever else. And obviously, like, that's probably a pretty unhealthy thing. And you're running a really fucking dark line there.
Yeah.
But he still never did anything.
Real gray, real fast.
Yeah, but he still never did anything. So, and there was a lot of other stuff. Like, he would watch pornography for, like, 8 hours a day and shit while he was at work and so on and so forth. But, there is also a necessity in that playfulness, I think, too, because, like, I want people to want you. Like, there's a want, because no one wants to fuck somebody that nobody wants, as nitty gritty and as fucking shallow and whatever that sounds. It's true, So, like, I don't want to walk around and, like, be like, oh yeah, no one look at her or whatever else. Like, I want you to be wanted. And that, so if you're over there and some guy compliments you or, and you giggle or some shit like that, like, I don't fucking care. Like, that's fine with me, 100%. I do not care. I don't have egotistical attachment to that, I guess, at this point in my life. And, I haven't never really had a big problem with that, so...
Well, and, I mean, the communication piece goes, like, just outside of the bedroom or, like, outside of the sex conversation, but also so much so with the sex stuff. Like, if you don't clearly communicate your needs, then your partner never even has the opportunity to meet those. But then even like that, like, there have been instances where we've been out together and you've, like, I'm, like, talking with somebody and it might be flirty on my end or whatever, and then you're kind of just like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to the girl up at the bar. And I'll, like, look, I'm like, okay, cool, have fun. Like, I think twice that one night, I'm thinking specifically, I was talking to this one person for a very long time, and so then you were like, I'm going to talk to that blonde over there.
And I didn't even know
I'm gonna, like,
if that was a flirting situation, I didn't even know at the time. I wasn't really probably paying attention or caring.
I feel like you probably did as later the night went, but
later the night, yeah. That's at
initially,
that point.
yeah, we were just, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was just on my end. Like, that's what I said. On my end.
Yeah.
Yep. But even that, like, right? Like, it wasn't like I turned around and you were gone and you were talking to some girl over there. Like, I would have been like, oh, okay. Because, like, you were there. You weren't necessarily super engaged in the conversation, but, like, you were there. So had you just, like, dipped and been talking to some girl, I would have been like, what the heck? But you literally were like, hey, I'm going to go talk to that blonde over there. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like...
Yeah. And so, I don't know, I think that helps keep the relationship fresh, in my personal opinion, and a lot of people would probably disagree. I know a lot of people would disagree, especially in certain communities, and be like, oh, that's just wrong, and, you shouldn't be flirting with anybody, and you shouldn't be doing that with, anybody but your wife. But honestly, like, it keeps it fresh to some degree. Like, it's not, like, fucking super, super fresh, but it keeps it, like, not so stale and not so, whatever, because I'm getting a little bit of a taste from whatever else, and, like, you're combating, like, I can dominate you as far as, like, the competitive, like, the dominating, mental thing. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, this conversation, I guess, you know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily, I don't know, just scratch that. Fuck.
I mean, I know
don't
that
how to
like
get my
in general
point
you
across.
just have like a stronger personality, but like what does that have to do with?
I just know you so much more now, and so then like if you're talking to somebody else that doesn't know you, and then you're like, that coyness and like the the flirtiness and stuff
Well, yeah,
like
the
that.
dynamics are just totally different.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I don't know. I just think at this point in my life, I'm not saying that I'll forever play this, but it's just a healthy, like, fucking playful way of keeping your relationship fresh.
Yeah, I think for us, it works.
But yeah,
and it's something that we even like, because we have fun even after the fact, playing around with that. Like, oh, my boyfriend, did you see him on Facebook? Like, talking about this guy that I was flirting with before. Like, and you obviously aren't egotistical about it or care or whatever. So it's just, like, funny. It's goofy. We're like, I don't know.
Yeah, because again, that it comes back to, like, putting your relationship on that pedestal or not. Like, if you're like, oh, this is, like, profound and devout and whatever else, and we can't do that, and what
it's so fragile, and we have to be so perfect around it because it's this thing.
Yeah, yep. We have to be really careful because my wife's ego or my husband's ego and blah 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 blah. But if you're, I mean, if you go back to the Bible, it just says be childlike. Be childlike. Like
we've even had people
have
like
fun.
Flirt with both of us, like and like having these conversations. I'm like, oh shoot, okay.
Did I miss that one?
No, when she was like, I'd literally date all of you. All three of you. Because there were some other guy that she was talking about too. And she's like, I'd date all three of you. I was like, oh, okay.
Where was that?
Here in town.
Oh, really? I can't remember.
The one that we already known had like been in a different kind of relationship, a polyamorous relationship, and then we were in town and she was like...
Oh. Yeah, maybe. I think I know what you're talking about.
Anyway.
Oh, but yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. I think that makes a huge part of it. Again, like, all this honesty stuff, like, anything that would have came up in that conversation that I talked to with the blonde, I would be open to saying over to my wife. Like, I probably did tell her about the conversation that we had. Oh, we talked about this. We talked about that. Oh, and then she said this. Oh, she said I had big arms or blah, blah, blah. Insert here. And so, like, I don't have to feel like I'm hiding anything. I'm not putting pressure on the fucking relationship. Like, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And that's it. Like, obviously I'm going to put the work into it. But, it's either going to work or it's not going to work.
And I think, like, even just thinking about, like, where we are with, like, the conversations we have around sex and, like, the flirting with other people thing. Like, we've come a long way, and I think that that's where, like, the 11 years is super valuable. Like, I would never want to discredit that because we have done so much growth and have, like, just expanded and evolved and been...
If there was one thing that I say we could, because we've touched on everything that we do pretty well, that we could do better, it would be in the moment communication.
Care to elaborate?
Like, while we're in the action, communication. I feel like we could do better communicating in that point.
What kind of action? Any?
Sexual action.
Oh, well, I'm so confused. Clearly. Oh yeah, I agree. So and that's something for me, which I've learned that I thought I was the most vulnerable person ever, and like I'm not.
And it turns out I'm more vulnerable.
I'm not actually. Vulnerability is actually pretty scary for me, and so that's one of them. Like I recognize, because there are even like, yeah, there's just times I recognize like, oh, I probably like, yeah, in those specific moments could have been like, how about here or do it like this or whatever. And I think when we hear about. Because, I mean, for some reason, I think about Sean and Sax because they claim they have, like, this amazing sex life. And I think that that's, like, part of it is that they, like, literally are, like, do this. Like, I would like this. And you're not going to know because you've never been in my body or, like, what works for me. And if I don't clearly communicate that, you never know. And sometimes there are things that just, like, spontaneously occur that I'm like, yes, that was it. And then we know that for future times. But, like, had I never said anything, that thing would have happened spontaneously that one time. And then we probably wouldn't have circled back to it because you wouldn't have known.
And if you can't do it, because I think that's where this is where we're at currently. I don't think we do it very often. We definitely don't do it as very often as much as we could in the moment. But I think after the fact, they're like, yeah, that was good when you did that, after the fact. So at least, even though it's not in the moment, at least we're still communicating, after the fact. So. Well, we got like 10 more minutes. What?
We don't have to forcibly fill the time.
Yeah, I know, but I want to make sure that we cover everything because I feel like we've been on a pretty damn good roll here, and we've talked about some decent, solid, awesome stuff.
Solid, awesome.
Roles in general. We could talk about everybody's role will look different as far as their relationship and their skill set. Like some women will be more financially savvy than men, but I think more often than not, men are typically more financially savvy just because of their logic and just how their brains are wired. So like for us, I'm the finance guy, and I don't ask her for permission to do deals because she trusts me to do the right deals or whatever else. But I'm also not doing the deals behind her back at this point, essentially. I'm sure at some point when we get to a level, there might be oh yeah, I had this great opportunity today.
Yeah, by the way.
And actually, I invested that $2,500 fucking with Dom.
How that happened.
Yeah, I told.
It wasn't a conversation before.
Yeah, it wasn't a conversation.
Like, hey, I did this.
Yeah, it just popped up and I just fucking did. I was like, yeah, fucking $2,500 done. And then that was it. But she trusts me to do intelligent things like that. And men have to have a good track record, which I have a so-so track record because I've also lost a lot of money. So, but the thing is, when you're young and you're learning and whatever else, you are going to lose some fucking money here and there.
And I also trust you to handle and learn from your losses. Period. Even when those things come, I don't think you're gonna flippantly lost all this money here, no big deal, I'll just make this other stupid decision. You learn from those losses, which then makes me trust you as well.
Since we've moved here, we've had a lot of fucking money sitting in our bank account, and we haven't really touched a whole lot. Well, we spent a decent amount on
trips
on the slides and the trips and the on different random stuff. But not oh, I want a new gun, so I'm going to go out and buy a new gun, I'm not just frivolently spending things. I'm spending, we bought a snowmobile because we snowmobile together. I bought, we cleared out the land in the back, that's an investment. We redid the basement, that's an investment. Things that,
are trips together.
Yeah, things that are investments, I'm fucking doing. And I'm not, just spending it on, I got a fucking bike so I can go out with the boys or some shit like that. No, I'm spending it on things that are an investment into us.
And I think the role thing also comes down to communication. Because there were times, even simple things, finances is a pretty big one, but even thinking about making dinner. There was a point in our life where he didn't communicate his expectation for me to be the one to make dinner, and I just never did. So I never did. So we'd come home after work and he'd be like, what are we doing for dinner? And I'm like, why are you asking me? I don't know. And so then there was strife because we there's no dinner being made, there's no conversation being had, and so then he was like, hey, this is kind of what I was expecting for your role. And so then after we had that conversation, I was like, okay, that makes sense. I agree to that. We communicated about it. Then that was just forever the thing. I planned for dinner and I made dinner and. There's
this really funny clip. I forgot what or TV show it's from, but he's like, oh, you want to get married? Yeah, I think it's a great idea to get married. Okay, let's talk about the terms. All right, I get every weekend with the boys. I get blah blah blah. And they go back and forth, and they at the end they're like, well, is that a make it or break it thing for you? And they're like, yes. And she's like, well, at least we tried. Well, maybe we can revisit this in 10 years. And, because it's funny, but it's a real concept of how, marriage should be done, in my personal opinion.
People just come together and hope it's, all going to work out.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of moving pieces and aspects to, bringing two people together and creating a life that works.
Yeah, especially when you're bringing kids into the fact. You got family members, and, there's just a lot of different dynamics. And so, and we didn't know this when we got married, I don't think. I learned about this after the fact. Like when we talked to David. David was the one that really turned me on to this.
I mean, we had some stuff figured out because we did
had-
live together, so just like to make the day-to-day stuff, but the deeper level stuff.
Yeah, we had the conversations about how to raise kids and, you know, all kinds of different stuff and generalized, yes. But like the whole like he's like literally write up a contract and like this is my expectations of you. This is and
These
then
are
like
my
sign
needs.
it.
What
And it's
one
not
do you need?
yeah, and it's not like some fucking court documentation like if we get divorced, I'm gonna sue you because this, you know, you're not fucking sucking my dick 3 times a week or shit. But you know, it's like an expectation. Like this is what I expect of you. Like it's just clearly communicating. It's a communication factor. Like this is what I expect, and this is what I expect. You know, and like okay, cool. Let's make sure that we're both, you know, trying to uphold the, you know,
the agreement.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't. I don't think that doesn't take away from the romanticness of the whole ordeal. Because I think a lot of people could say like, oh, that's just like, you know, that's just too businessy for me. Like, no, it's like I understand their point, but I think it's important to know your expectations, and if you write those down, like, because you know what you might not know what you want, but hopefully you know what you want, and those things might change throughout the years. You know, maybe you don't need this thing, but you'd like more of this or less of that, and you know, bring it all in. But at least it's something to start with. And regardless of whether you're married or not. Right now, you can do this with your partner today. Like, there's no reason why you can't, like, you know, sit down and say, hey, listen, I would like to, you know, this isn't really necessarily working out with me. You know, can we do this? And, you know, expectations right now. Like, you make dinner, now from here on out, you make dinner, you know, 3 times a week or every night or whatever else, and I'll do this. What do you need from me? And then, like, you're trying to fulfill your partner's needs the best you can, and then your relationship is going to be that much better.
Right. You know what the needs are, you're agreeing to the ones that you can meet, and then you're putting in the work to do that. Because just like anything, if you go into it unintentionally and just hope that, like a sailboat without like you know, if you just like wait for the wind to just blow you wherever, like you're never going to reach that like next level, like intimacy, love, connection. Yeah, when you just have it all. And we don't have this like all set out, but we also communicate very regularly and are very aware of.
We do not have a physical contract, but we're also like constantly communicating and constantly telling each other what we need from them.
Like we are very rarely kept in the dark with things.
Very
rarely.
Another thing, real quick, so we got about 3 minutes left, but I wanted to say, like, when you hit up arguments, because, like, you know, sometimes things get heated, and there is friction in relationships. For us, it is basically, instead of, like, because you can't have a conversation when, you know, when one or both are heated to a point of not hearing each other. If you're not in a receptive state. If you're not in a receptive state, it's not a good time to have any conversation, whether it's employees, spouse, kids, whatever. Just fucking set it aside for the time being until they're in a receptive state, and then come back to it. So, like, if I know I'm not in a receptive state, or I know that she's not in a receptive state, or if I'm just fucking livid and I can't fucking stand her right now, then I just say, I need you to leave me alone. And if it's a need, then your spouse, you should want to fulfill that for them, regardless. Because especially, you know, like if it's not going to be productive if you continue.
Yes.
You don't want to throw anything in on that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, part of that I think is like, a lot of it, you have to get practice in setting your ego aside and knowing yourself. Because if you don't know that you're in that place to say, I need this from you, then it will continue and continue. Or if I'm, like, losing my mind and, like, you're able to at least recognize, because you do know me. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could even just have a full topic about arguments and that, but, yeah.
Okay, well, we're about at our hour.
I feel like the end of it was so fast.
Feel free to follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. So we're all over the place. Feel free to add us as a friend. Follow our personal accounts. Feel free to ask questions, what we should talk about next. We're always open to having conversations pretty much about whatever, obviously.
And let us know if you disagree or have different points of view, because we're always open to hearing that also.
Yeah, different tools. We're always open to introducing new tools to our relationship and trying something new. So, yeah. All right.
Okay. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.